Hello and welcome to this episode of Focus On with me, Kiamogetse Mosepele. The Mastercard Indaba 2024 aims to showcase Africa's boundless potential within the digital and financial infrastructure. This includes the rising influence of fintechs to instant payments, as well as legislative reforms within the regulatory environment, bringing Africa closer to the global economy. Mastercard Indaba 2024 is all about collaboration, innovation, and unlocking opportunities that propel growth across the continent. This is according to Gabriel Swanepoel, Country Manager Southern Africa, Mastercard, on how the multinational organization creates solutions that tackle local challenges while leveraging their global advantage.
We started Indaba back in 2016 originally, and the intent around that was to talk about all of the digital innovations at that particular point in time that was making inroads into South Africa and that supported our customers. And since then, the event has really developed into a broader industry event that not only incorporates our customers and partners from a bank perspective, but more broadly collaborators and broader participants within the payments ecosystem. So today we have retailers that participate, we've got telcos that participate, we have representatives from the regulator and the broader fintech community. And it's fantastic to spend a day and a half together and be able to talk all things payments.
So the overarching theme, which is you serve a number of institutions, organizations, and the everyday person. Just touching on the technology or the economic landscape within Africa, how would you say that is evolving, particularly touching on some of the key themes or threats that have been highlighted, which is touching on, the threat of cybersecurity, as well as ensuring that the end user or consumer has value and is satisfied?
I think one of the benefits of digitization, if we can talk to a term that sees people being able to access more information readily, to be able to exchange value in a digital way, is that we've made the world much more efficient and we've almost made the world small in the way that people connect with each other. But the reality of it is that we also expose ourselves, right? We expose ourselves to bad actors that might not necessarily have our best interests at heart. And so from a Mastercard point of view, we take safety and security really seriously. And the way that we think through solving for it is deploying technology that is fit for purpose in the different environments where we connect the stakeholders within our ecosystem. So to quickly talk to that, we have to make sure that merchants and consumers that interact with our banking partners are equally protected and that there's a standardized way in which they engage to ensure that transactions are safe and that it's secure, but also easy to use. And so what we get passionate about is what are the tool sets that we need to bring together in a unique way that enables the flow of funds and is easy to use for consumers, but do not compromise on that security. And so in Africa, when we think about the way that we provide value, it is not just thinking about the person going to the corner cafe wanting to buy a bread and a Coca-Cola. It's also thinking about those workers that might be working far away from home and need to send money home, do so quickly and efficiently, and be able to do so in a manner that is easy to use and accessible.
Now, I'd like to touch on small, medium enterprises, particularly within the context of our country, which mirrors a lot of African economies where there's high rates of unemployment, and a possible solve could be entrepreneurship. Now, as it contributes to about 50% of GDP in Africa, it is understandably an important function of any growing economy. How is MasterCard going about, creating that environment where that fintech innovation and that access to cash can help these budding entrepreneurs achieve some of their goals?
I think the key word is access. It is access to credit, it is the ability to transact, and it is the ability to serve consumer need where the consumer is at. So to make that real, you and me both would want to be able to purchase goods when we want, where we want, and whatever we have at our disposal, right? We want it to be very easily accessible. And so what we need to think about is how do we enable the small and micro enterprises on the continent to provide that services in a way that consumers want to consume it. And so the way that we think about it is to think In the case of South Africa, as an example, the country has roughly just over 5 million micro enterprises. And what we've seen over the last 2 years, if you look at the numbers from 2021 up until the end of 2023, the card acceptance network has grown from about 600,000 odd outlets to just over 2 million at the end of 2023. And that is testament to innovation in making the deployment of technology to enable those types of transactions that satisfies the consumers at the point of transaction in a way that meets not just the demands of the consumer, but also serves the merchants within that particular environment. And COVID helped. So to make it practical, to just make the example practical, during COVID, we saw a massive increase. I think it was around 67% of contactless transactions, and people not having ready access to ATMs, for example, prefer to use their cards within those environments. So we haven't seen that growth stop. That growth has continued unabated. And so when we also talk about e-commerce, we are hovering around the 30% year-on-year growth from a South African perspective in opening up those services. Now, I think that ultimately, at a very fundamental level, the way that outflows into the market is these micro enterprises having visibility around transaction volumes then give rise to credit lenders to be able to score them a little bit differently or think about credit worthiness in a different way than it used to be think about before. And so there are many ancillary services as these transactions digitize that is now able to provide new services into that micro trader environment, which then allows them to become part of the formalized economy.
Well, I'm also interested, as you've mentioned, that there's a new generation of users that are digital natives, and I actually feel represented because that looks like me. But additionally, a common story for people like that, they're often young and breadwinners and see the critical need to kind of send that money back home while they go about their day and make money for the rest of the family, which is a synonymous story across a lot of African families. What would you say is the role of Mastercard in ensuring that the ease of access within making cross-border payments is achieved?
You know, one of the core tenets of Mastercard is to drive interoperability, to provide access, and to do so as part of a global network. And so from a broader cross-border remittances point of view in Africa, we have done a lot of work to make sure that intra-Africa flows are available. And we've opened up a lot of corridors on the African continent that allows people to do exactly what you're speaking about. So if you're a Zimbabwean, for example, living in South Africa, you have the ability to very easily send money back home to family that might live outside of a Mutare in Harare and be able to collect those funds within 30 minutes of originating the transaction.
We also spoke to Priza Manzena, Senior Vice President, Assistant General Counsel, Regulatory Affairs, Eastern Europe, Middle East and Africa, on the role of Mastercard as a trusted technology provider in partnering with governments to develop and support the continent's payment systems.
Basically, what we do, we connect economies, we power people, we offer technology that allows banks, financial institutions, fintechs to access particular services. So if you look at the modernization journey in South Africa, banks and local governments have sort of started to think about how do they access services which are global, which are interoperable, and which offer safe and secure services. As part of what we offer in market, we brought our digital infrastructure in South Africa. It is the best of Mastercard technology, the latest technology. It's a single processing network which is interoperable. What that then offers the banks is the ability to access the best of technology, global technology in South Africa. And how we brought that into market is that we engaged with our South African Reserve Bank in terms of what is the policy position. We don't want to bring technology that is not going to support what the government is trying to do. So we collaborate with them, we understand what they want to deliver. Then we bring a technology that is going to support them in that journey. What that does is it benefits the country in that we bring in the best that allows for digital inclusion, but also from a government perspective, it reduces fragmentation and it brings global interoperable services in South Africa.
I appreciate how you've touched on access, but also that comprehensive approach of bringing in, as you've mentioned, the South African Reserve Bank. And I'd just like to touch on, increasing access or digital inclusion. There's an African adage that says if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. Just please touch on some of the work you do within increasing that level of digital inclusion within Southern Africa.
So, I mean, inclusion is at the core of what we do. Inclusion for us means more than just financial inclusion. It talks to financial well-being as well. So, we include SMEs, we include governments, and we also include individuals. So we bring solutions that will cater and that will include those different people. If you look at an individual, there's a service that we call Community Pass. That's a digital tool that gives an ID for you to be able to access services. Therefore, it broadens participation. If you're an SME, we offer SME in a box, which basically is a quicker digital adoption tool. You set up and you're able to provide services immediately. We also offer for women, we also offer different products like our track product, which is a micro track product where it creates like a financial digital footprint for you. Therefore, banks are able to see if you're selling something, they're able to see, how much did you sell? And they're able to advance you with loans going forward. So inclusion for us is something that it's core, and we have goals towards that. So our goal is to include 1 billion people by 2025 and also 50 SMEs.
And I appreciate how you've touched on, that product that caters to a part of society or a group which is often seen as marginalized, which is women. But the conversation I'd also like to, have is we are two women seated at this table talking about technology, advancing technology in Africa, and more importantly, finances and money. That's often not the case when speaking about these two topics. Why do you think there is a need for more representation within women, particularly also bringing in, the African context?
Yeah.
Why do you think that needs to happen?
Yeah. I mean, I'll just touch on Mastercard. So for us, women inclusion, it's not something that we just talk about and say, we'll include women. We understand that diversity, women inclusion is good for business. You want to have different views. I'm certain that if we're going to roll out a product, we want to know, will you care like the product? Will please like a product? If you have same people sitting around the table designing a product without diversity, without a women view, it means that the product that is going out there will not reach you and I. I'm from Mamelodi, in Pretoria. I was raised by my grandmother. My grandmother had a tavern. And, that inclusion, that, cash, is cash heavy. When you bring in a digital product, it just makes it slightly easier for her to for the bank to track what she's selling and for her to do stock taking. So that's just one level of it. But also we create tools at Mastercard which will, which bring in women like my grandmother who are able to use digital tools. From what are we doing broadly as Mastercard? So we have different forums. We've got Women Leadership, which is a program that is available for women that can join a new network. So it's like a networking opportunity. We're also, the way that we think about promotions and the way that we hire, our practices are geared towards including women. And we also showcase women. I'm sitting here with you. We showcase our senior women leaders and, so that everyone is aware that, yes, you can make it. Yes, you can be female. That does not count against you.
Shabir Ahmed, Vice President Customer Solutions for Southern Africa, Mastercard, unpacks the need for responsible lending and credit access when it comes to supporting the growth trajectory of micro merchants and fostering inclusive economic growth within emerging markets.
What we do here in Mastercard is we ensure that whatever we do in terms of a value exchange, we provide the best solutions for our customers. Now, when we look at our customers, we kind of look at, what does the consumer need? What works best for the consumer? We then look at kind of businesses and SMEs, what makes them kind of think. And as Mastercard, because we've got the technology that's available and this connectedness of the network, we kind of bring together these solutions that kind of are adaptable to the market in South Africa.
Now, I would imagine that just taking on some of the businesses you serve and the different scalability within that, what would work for a small, medium enterprise would not work for some of the larger corporates. Just touching on cash flow, what is your view on responsible lending and more so credit access for micro merchants, but also within the context of emerging markets? How do you create access, which is often needed within that context?
Yeah, look, I think it's a very important question, and you hit the nail on the head. Earlier, you said, different organizations have different needs. So what we do is we contextualize the solutions within Mastercard. Now, when we talk about lending, right, it's very important that we are responsible in terms of the solutions that we provide. Now, I'll give you a typical example. If you take the acceptance environment, so this is businesses that are starting to accept cards as a form of payment, it has grown 3 times in the last 3 years. So that means that we have a view of what's happening in terms of the data. Now, we use this alternative data to provide to give the credit providers the ability to further enhance credit to these businesses, because why? SMEs are continuously looking for cash flow and kind of cash in order to grow their businesses within this environment. So I guess the point is we use the additional data, we use all the forms of data that we have to create the models to provide to our customers lending as well.
And I appreciate that you've touched on how you can create that access to finance. Often a lot of entrepreneurs who are going about entering the mammoth task of starting their own business often complain about that barrier to access in terms of getting the right financial instruments to advance their operations. But I'd just like to understand how Mastercard is localizing its solutions for the South African market, particularly within the context of the unbanked and the often underserved or excluded populations.
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. So I mean, in as much as customers' needs are different countries have different needs as well, right? I mean, if you take South Africa, right, we've kind of invested in this market and we've got our latest technology that's in South Africa. I think secondly, what we've done is we've identified, there are key needs that are playing out in the different segments within the market. And this is where we will partner with some of the fintechs. And typically we use these fintechs to localize solutions in South Africa. If you take kind of, one of the examples in the acceptance side is there was a massive need for cheap acceptance and access to that. So we've kind of brought one of the fintechs on board. We partnered with the fintech and we managed to grow acceptance across the South African environment. Typically, you've got on the consumer side, right? We have the different needs that come about from an affluent market versus a mass market. We understand what's going on in the South African consumer. So when we create value propositions, that are much more localized than bringing across value propositions that don't make sense in the market.
And you've touched on fintechs, which is, a fast-growing segment within the African space. Just bring it back to South Africa. What are some of the ways Mastercard goes about utilizing its technology investments just to ensure that clients are provided with the best solutions?
So as I said earlier, I mean, we brought the latest technology into South Africa. And one of the things that we've picked up in South Africa is that merchants are requiring early access to their funds or quicker settlement of their funds. So essentially what we've done in South Africa is we're saying, how do we use the technology to ensure that the South African business gets settled quicker than they get settled today? So imagine the world where I tap my card and the merchant gets settled immediately, and that's going to be in South Africa next year. I think the other thing that's important is we've created these kind of ecosystem plays. So if you think about the farming sector, you think about the informal sector, we create these platforms within the South African environment, or we partner with these fintechs in order to provide the necessary solutions to the customers on both sides of the ecosystem.
Metekene, Executive Vice President, Services Eastern Europe, Middle East and Africa Mastercard, spoke to us about the increasingly important role of data in creating customer value through insights, analysis, and market intelligence that can enhance future-proofing strategies and operational planning.
Talking about data, I like using the analogy of data becoming the new oil. There was so much wealth created by oil, And data will create much more wealth in the next 50 years compared to what oil had done in the past. We were leveraging data in a way that it was describing what has happened. Then it evolved into a case where it tells about what's going to happen. It's more like predictive. And what we are seeing nowadays is the prescriptive power of data. You see the evolution from descriptive to predictive and now prescriptive, telling us what we need to do with data. And in fact, all this shift in terms of mobile phones, online behavior, digital purchases, help us to create so much data. And I think this is much more than we can process and use to create insights. But what comes to our help is artificial intelligence, the computing power of processors. That will help us to process all this data in a way that we will be creating very valuable insights to the consumers. And we will do it in a way that it will be very personalized. You will get things which are extremely relevant for you, which are meeting the expectations of your business, of your personal needs, and you will enjoy the outcome of this data and will be benefiting from several options, offers, and insights. But we also need to respect the concerns about, privacy, how data is being utilized. And this is why we believe that consumers should own their own data, should control how this data is being utilized, and should have the capability to choose when, how this data can be used, and when it shouldn't be even touched.
So you've said data is like the new oil, and data has become synonymous, right, with predicting what the future of technology looks like. But more so, businesses need to stay abreast of these changes so that they can, take advantage and truly capitalize on that. So from a consultancy perspective, how would you say advisors can play a role in empowering organizations to make smarter decisions considering this environment?
Well, we have a very big advisors team all around the world, supporting our partners on several topics. But it is not just financial institutions. We work with governments, we work with retailers, airlines, and in fact, one of the biggest governments in this region is using our advisory capabilities to attract more tourists to their country. Similarly, one of the biggest retailers, one of the biggest coffee shops globally is utilizing our personalization tools to be able to increase their basket size. Today, everyone is going through same set of challenges and objectives. Everyone wants to grow their customer base, everyone wants to improve their revenues, improve their profit margins, but at the same time optimize their business in terms of the cost structure, the organization structure, while accelerating the digital transformation. If you talk to any CEO, one of the top 3 agenda items will be always accelerating this digital transformation. And at the same time, with all these kind of changes, new technologies, and improvements in terms of our customer experience, we still face a lot of risk when it comes to cybersecurity. In fact, all these topics are areas where our advisory team can support our clients in order to reach their objectives, whether it is a KPI about growing the business, or safeguarding their customers, or transforming everything they do in a way that they are leveraging all the new technologies to improve the customer or user journeys.
Ed McLaughlin is the President of Operations and Chief Technology Officer for Mastercard. He shared his insights on decoding digital trust in a fast-paced digital environment.
We're at a time of tremendous change, particularly in technology. But what's most important is how we can bring that change to market and help our consumers. So one of the most important things for Mastercard is all the new ways we can connect to people, how we can add value or serve people we never could before. So when we talk about contextual commerce, it really is this convergence of the physical and digital world and how we can create new capabilities for that. Now the other side of it, while we can reach more people with financial inclusion and through their devices, also with what's happening with artificial intelligence and cybersecurity is equally essential to make sure they can trust the systems and we have the safety and security they need to reliably use those new payment methods.
Now, an earlier panelist has said that one of the key elements within the financial space is trust. You've touched on cybersecurity, which is an increasingly hot topic within the space. Now, touching on how Africa continues to grow as a financial payment system and, you know, its global share within that market, would you say the payments landscape within the space is increasingly becoming more secure? And more importantly, what is that risk premium within that space that is associated with Africa, and how is Mastercard approaching that?
Yeah, trust is essential for doing business, particularly in changing markets or in this electronic realm. Mastercard's invested over $7 billion in the last 5 years, building security systems, building that type of trust. So one of the areas is making sure the system itself is secure. So the things we do for endpoint defense, the things we do for encryption, and making sure that we will always be reliable and available for consumers. The second thing is for consumers themselves. So we've stopped over $20 billion worth of fraud in just the last year using very sophisticated AI systems. As a consumer using Mastercard, you have zero liability for fraud which might happen to you on the network. So I think the trust that the systems will be there, they work reliably, the trust that we're using your data for appropriate means to make the services better, and the trust that you're covered and protected in the case anything goes wrong. That's the foundation for people being able to take advantage of all the great new experiences we can give them.
Now, bring it back home. What are some of the technologies that excite you within Africa, and what do you look forward to implementing the most?
So some of the most exciting technologies we're seeing are in Africa, because a lot of that development, the leapfrog development, is happening here first. So the sophistication of things like the mobile money offerings that are out there, the ability for us to now, as we're bringing processing into Southern Africa, to get greater reliability, greater speed of what we have and how we're doing there, and the ability to take really powerful new techniques around artificial intelligence to give highly tailored and personalized experiences for people, to protect the systems better against fraud, and to unleash all new types of insights and analytics from the data available to us.
And that concludes this episode of Focus On at the Mastercard Indaba 2024. From myself, and the CNBC Africa team, it's goodbye for now.